Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Anchor of the Week. My name is Lucas.
And I'm Courtney, and we're an initiative of Hope and Anchor Community Church in London.
Each week, we'll be discussing different topics related to faith and Christianity in today's culture.
We're here to share our experiences as the church and to challenge one another to grow in living life like Jesus.
So, today we're going to be talking about the importance of being in community.
Yes.
And
Good topic.
yes. So, and why we wanted to bring this out is because we see so much how we feel like we're thriving or looking for being and moving as an individual, more of like the importance of being in a community.
Yeah. Well, I think too, this is something that the Bible and culture are very different on, which can be expected, obviously, because the Bible brought kingdom culture. But it's this whole idea of that society and culture is telling us to be independent, be independent,
Yes.
Only trust yourself kind of ideal.
Follow your heart, as we said last time.
Yes, if you watch the Heart versus the Mind podcast, you'll know that following your heart is quite misleading.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think a very good example is of living in community would be when Israel was moving through the desert,
That small community of 1 million people, yes.
Yes. There were brothers and sisters.
Yes, I know, right?
Yeah, but as we were going, or we were thinking of this topic, is I was just thinking of it and how we always talk about how God wants the church to be a body, and to move as a body. Everybody has their own place, and God's plan, but the goal is the same one, and it's reaching out, is being the light, being that love that God translate himself to us, or he is to us.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And we could see that Israel was is a whole, but then you had the different
tribes
that came out of them as well.
Yeah.
And God had asked them to take different places within that community.
There were certain roles for them, right?
Yes.
They had different kind of
different tasks or things. I think that then it was a little bit more practical, I feel like. But yes. But when I think of it, they were all going through one same thing, right? And if we think about it as an individual point of view, right? If Moses would have not been there, and if it was just one person going to the promised land, would it have been that easy? People will keep you, I feel they keep you comfortable, they keep you going to the same place. It's kind of like being in community. It's kind of more like swimming in a river towards the same direction as the river is going, So
kind of the current is carrying you.
Current is,
when you have stopped swimming or your arms are getting too tired,
Yeah.
Actually, this reminds me of, sorry.
Yeah.
But so when it was Moses, right? So the Israelites, when I'm trying to remember this, I'm reading through Exodus right now, which is actually great that we're talking about this. I don't remember exactly where in Exodus this is, but when they're the Israelites are fighting against someone in the land. I don't exactly remember who. But that whole time of Aaron and that other guy, I'm so sorry, I should have done some more Bible research, holding Moses' arms up, right?
Yeah.
To win the fight, as long as Moses' arms were up, And to think, if Moses didn't have anyone else there, his arms would have given out way faster, right? Sorry, I just, put two and two together right now.
Well, it's not just that. He would have been fighting for himself.
Oh, that's true. What army would have been fighting?
Yeah. And that's the thing, is when we move as just we want to be just an individual, there's nobody to be with you. You're just on your own. You're actually, you have to create your own current. So it's coming more to from your own strength in a way, right? If we are looking for what the world is saying, that follow your heart kind of thing, that's all on your own. Just on you.
Yeah.
So if you don't wake up with the right mood that day, you're completely gone. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah. But this is the beauty of the body, right? Because if I wake up and I'm not in, let's just say, a great mood, but I have planted myself within a community that is healthy and growing and becoming more like Jesus,
Yeah.
then I don't have to be in a great mood every day. Like I don't have this pressure of being perfect because I know I'm being covered and I know I'm being cared for.
Yeah.
You know, and wherever you find this community, it could be, I don't know, like a church community or a missions community, whatever it is, you know. But just that whole idea of like you don't have to. I feel like there's almost less performing, if this makes sense. I mean, well, maybe. Do you have something else to say?
I mean, I don't think it should be like that. I think yes, community becomes like a family, and you work together, and there should be unconditional love.
Yeah.
And because of that, like if somebody's struggling, you help them get up, and all that, which you don't get as you're moving alone.
Right.
But there should always be something. And when there's like, as if love and God is the center, we do it and we move as Jesus did. He was always going for more.
Yeah.
And God keeps moving. But I feel like, what you were saying, is that it feels like we don't do as much because the thing is that we can trust on everyone. We're all working for the same thing, and it becomes lighter in a way because it's not all on you.
You have more people to carry the load in that sense, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the pros of we talked quite a bunch of them right now about community, right?
That's the pros of community.
If you're going through something, you have more people to talk about it, to like people that can feel related or with the situation or what you're going through. And I think as well, it's like if God has been speaking to somebody else before, before what you went through, like they went through the same thing and now you're going through it, you can find wisdom from God, and they can share about what they have experienced with God. And you don't get that much if you're like on your own, right?
Yeah. It's really interesting because you're saying this and I'm thinking like, wow, this requires a lot of vulnerability, because obviously if I'm going through something and I share it with you, that requires vulnerability for me. And I'm just like brought in or like reminded of some reason our human aversion to vulnerability. I think it's our self-protection mode, like don't be vulnerable. But how like we can be in a community. And I mean, this is something that like I literally say all the time because it's a revelation that God gave me a few years ago, but like being open is not the same as being vulnerable. So you could be open in a community, so share things and everything, but without the vulnerability aspect, like you won't get everything out of being in a community. And so I think that's something that we like can talk about too, is that just because you're in a community doesn't mean that, okay, now it's a free ride, like it's a free pass. Like you're fine. You're finally found a church. So now all you have to do is just sit there, but the aspect of finding a community and then going deeper, like getting involved, making actual connections, like real relationships with people. Because I think that sometimes maybe this too is, and of course we talk always almost from the Western Christian culture perspective, because that's the one that we're in. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like we just kind of cross the line of community and we say, okay, well, I'm a part of it now. Well, I'm a member of this church now, or I go to this Connect group now, and then I stop, right? And so, but God has so much more for us than that, right? It's not just enough to be in a community, but to actually like take the most out of it. If this was God's design for us and his plan for us to move as a body, how do we actually get everything out of it?
And that takes us to what a part takes to be an individual, moving as an individual as well, because we have a responsibility, and God told us to spread the word. That was his, before he left, that's the first thing he said, and yes, that takes place through community, because the goal is the community. Yeah. That's basically what he said with that. But
it takes community to transform community.
Yeah.
Okay. But write that down.
But to spread the word, to spread God, to make God like physical to people, like real, you have to be completely connected with him and real and like looking and seeking for him. And that doesn't take the community, doesn't take you as an individual
Yeah.
to seek for him
Right.
as a person on your own. Because the community might sometimes be not going to the right place. And if you're just going where the community is going, you get all dispersed.
Right. Right.
But that's why it's also important as an individual to be seeking for God, and as you were saying, like to take responsibility of what God has called us to do. You know.
So in this sense, like then God has asked us, right, to be a healthy community, if you will, if I'm, can say that, as people that are equally searching after him on their, not just on their own, but like in their individual life, but then also moving together and seeking him together, right? It's that kind of balance. And this is also reminding me, or like causing me to think of what a lot of people might say or kind of counter community, or maybe a fear of being in community, is losing individuality.
Yeah.
Right? And this whole sense of, well, we like independence and individuality because, we want to be ourselves. We want to have our own flavor, our own color,
Yeah.
And that's healthy, I think. But I think it can be a fear sometimes of when you join a community, or you're implanted in a certain church or whatever. We say church because we're part of a church, so it makes sense to us.
Yeah.
But then that all of a sudden you become just like everyone else, know? But it's this whole idea, I think, too, of, taking ownership as well, but remembering that God has called us to still be individuals, but in a community. And I know we talk about this a lot on our show and just in the church in general, but God has made us, one body of many parts, right? And I know this might be redundant because the church talks about this a lot, but I think it's so important, like we're not called to be the same, we're called to be different, but actually working in our place, the foot needs to actually start walking and the hand needs to pick things up,
But I guess, yes, as like we were saying, like, I feel like we don't hear this sometimes enough, or not the right way, is that God is he's gonna keep us accountable, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, like, that's why, like, he has called us all to go to a certain place, but like, he's gonna make sure, hey, do you remember what I said? He's not gonna call for the community, the Anchor of the Week community. No, he's gonna, hey, Lucas, what about this?
That's true.
And because of that, but it is important.
Okay, so we've established now, that we are not called to be independent, right? But this whole idea of, being interdependent on each other, right? So relying on each other, but dependent on God, which I think should be a given, but, should also say that, right? Like we're not here to be moved by community in the sense that, we don't do anything, right? It's God. We're dependent on him, and then we challenge each other, we push each other forward, right? But how do we do this practically? Because we could talk about this all day if we wanted to, right? Like, oh, it's a nice thought. But now, like, let's dive into how do we actually live this out, And as people that are both planted in community, but I don't know about you, but I haven't always, been in community.
Yeah.
Or at least really in community, How do we actually live this out on the day-to-day,
Yeah. How do we do it?
Silence as we contemplate our existence.
Yeah, well, first of all, and the obvious reason I think is like, of course, you have to have the same direction. You cannot just be on whatever. Like we all have to know where we're going and what God. Well, there are communities that don't follow God, so let's put it there.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So the community you have to be in is the ones that are seeking for God and. And all down.
I feel like this reminds me of the end of all of the Hope and Anchor services right now, the online ones. But it's after like the altar call, hey, you want to give your life to Jesus, but then it's always like, okay, now base yourself in a church, know, that like follows God, that is based in the Word, and like I guess it's being smart about it too, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't just blindly follow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just dive in. It's like a kind of thing. Jump.
Exactly.
But yeah, but there's nothing like training together, like working and absorbing from whatever God is working on each other as well. But like, I guess working in communities is looking for each other as well, and for the because if God calls us to be in community, then that means the community is also part of His plan. And it's not just that you are all right, but that the other person is all right as well, that they are right with God. And so I guess as well is that we have to be open and available for the other person as well, and for the team. We're a team, a community. We're all going to a certain place, so we need to make sure, taking care of each other and pushing each other forward when the other one is down. If you have all that energy, just keep encouraging each other.
So as you're saying this, I'm kind of reminded of how easy it is to, even though like you're in community, and I'm talking from my personal experience here, but sometimes I forget that it's about covering other people, or that it's actually so easy to still be, and I'm going to say this because this is what I struggle with, so no judgment to anyone else, but to be selfish in community, because sometimes, like, I guess I used to have this thought or this opinion that if I'm in community and I'm, active in it, and it's, like really invested, that it's almost like I'll be immune to selfishness or to individualism or to being independent. But that is so not true. Like, it's still like a daily fight and like a daily choice, I guess, which is something that, again, I can admit that I struggle with, because we're in community, I can be vulnerable with you.
And as well to like receive constructive criticism. Criticism. Yes, there you go. That's the word. Like, because we were saying like we're here for the community. We're reaching out the community, but as well like the community that we're working with, we're pushing each other to grow, and that would mean as well to be criticized for the good of working to the direction we're going.
Exactly, for the growth.
Yes.
And I think that is also something that we have totally kind of misconstrued, in today's culture, right? Yeah. It's very much like, don't say anything bad or any like, and of course I'm not talking about being critical. Like, there's a difference between, negative. Critically thinking and being critical, right? And if you see something needs to be improved, you bring it up, and if that's in my life, you see me going down like a not so great way, like, pretty please tell me, that's not community if you're, living life together, but you just kind of let everyone just do their thing, the whole point of community.
I mean, you do ask God beforehand, and
exactly.
Is this really you, God, or is it just me? Like,
just don't come up to me and point out my faults.
Person,
Exactly.
But
but it's also, I think, that aspect of community that doesn't like feel good necessarily, but it's for our benefit. And we're such like a generation and a culture of just chase whatever feels good.
Yeah.
That I think that's part of a perceived con maybe of community, but it's actually so good for us, to be invested in a place where, like, it's like, hey, actually, like, I don't think this is best for you, and to be able to receive that and to give that in trust, I think, I mean, it's really cool,
Yeah. And I was just thinking, a community is not followers. Like, sometimes I feel like I guess we all struggle sometimes as well. It's like, because like nowadays, it's like, who are following me or something like that. It's not like the Instagram or social media kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're all working together,
Exactly.
Of course, in leadership, if you're in a position of leadership, you have to be followed. And if you're not being followed, then you're not a leader.
Well,
but
there's a different weight that comes with that as well, so like,
but I guess what I was saying is not like you're in the community to be like, that's not the center to be followed, but it is to the goal, kind of
exactly.
thing. This can be taken out bad as well, but
you're like, don't take it out of context here.
Yes, please don't.
Yes, it's true though, and it's that whole idea of like actually pushing together, and I think that's what, because it's this kind of like contradiction in a sense of pulling your own weight, don't be a freeloader, but also understanding that you don't have to carry it by yourself. Like, somehow this doesn't make sense, but it makes perfect sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that beautiful, like, I feel like there's so many different like paradoxes in the kingdom, right? Like, there's so many. I could go through them all, but I actually probably couldn't. But it's this whole idea of like, it doesn't make sense, yet somehow it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Like, when you have God as the center, and you're all pushing towards a goal, everyone needs to be living out their identity, you know, living out their calling, their purpose on this earth. But when an entire group of people like are doing that, like how forceful that is, you know. And you think about movements, right? In just history in general, and it was never one person.
No.
You know, maybe there was one person that kind of like headed up or was quote unquote the face of a movement or the voice of a generation or something, but it involved everyone pushing together but to that common goal, you know. And it's nothing less with Christians, you know, or with us.
It's just something that like I was thinking about. I just made me think of the movies, you know, like how many movies we see of war and stuff like that. It's like this person is like stands up for this one word, which encourages everyone to, I don't know, stand up for themselves, or I don't know. It can be all kinds of things, right? That one person doesn't make the whole thing happen. It's everyone together for that one goal. And like we see it so many times, like how we want to be part of something bigger and like all this, you know. But then we also get driven to like being individual and the male thing kind of.
And I think something that this points to is we have to remember that like every part of the body is valuable.
Yeah.
You know, like we are such, I don't want to say we're such a generation, but we do struggle with seeing only the top people as the important people, you know, but understanding exactly as we're talking about right now that it takes literally everyone. Yeah. And again, this goes back to, you know, the Bible where it says like every part of the body is valuable and has a purpose, you know? Yeah. And I mean, we can really honestly look at the physical body, you know, like the metaphor for this, the analogy, and see, like, you know, if you don't have like your big toe, you actually can't balance properly. You know, it's something that seems so small, but actually will throw off everything, you know? And so I think we need to have a revelation and ask God to renew our minds to see the value of each aspect of community. You know, whether or not you feel like you're in like a super prominent position or if you feel like you're almost doing nothing, you know, like we have to be able to step back and to see it from God's perspective and to say, oh, like he called us to be the body, every single part, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, as we were saying, when we say we're here for the community, that means also the individual, each one of them, and support and more.
Also, on a practical side, you get more done when you're in community.
Yeah.
So I think about Hope and Anchor, right? Our church. Yeah. And right now, so obviously London is in
tasks flows faster.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
And being right now in like the lockdown, just a lot of things are going on, right, in the city right now. And so one of the things that we're doing as outreach is we're going to door offering specific support, right? So whether groceries, you know, prayer, whatever people need. And so one thing we're doing is we're going to like, you know, estate buildings and we're literally going door to door. Can you imagine if you were one person doing that? How long that would take, you know? But when it's a whole team, it's a whole community that goes after that one goal together. Yeah. You know, it's like literally a flood of people that are here to like bring the good news, you know?
I guess the thing maybe we forget as well is that when we talk about community, we talk about a body, and a body means one. So we have to strive as well. Like we say, like to grow, that means to grow to be one, and that will mean as well that you're not asking this person to do something like you think about of it. It's how we think of it. It's like we're moving as a body. We already know how we want it, you know, and we all move to it, and that's why the task flow faster, because as we're growing, we already know what we're going for and how we want the things to go, and that's why it's, of course, it flows faster, and
there's a momentum that gets created, right, when you're many people after that same thing. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. You know, it's like when the ball starts rolling, you know, and everyone's pushing, things go faster, you know? And then we can like keep going with it.
It's very good.
So
what are your thoughts of this podcast? What do you think are the highlights?
My closing statements? Are you asking
statements?
Me? Yeah, okay. I think for me personally, that I just need to allow my view of community to be renewed. You know, and to see it, because when you're in community, it can be very tunnel vision sometimes, or you can forget the blessings, you know. Sometimes it's so easy to focus on the cons. So to have that time to step back and be like, okay, what does God actually say? You know, what does he say about the body? But the fact that we were literally all created to work together, and an imperfect way because we're human.
Yeah.
You know, but the beauty of being known. And I think, I mean, we could talk about intimacy, but that could actually just be a whole other podcast topic.
Yeah.
You know, but they say to intimacy is, you know, being known and to know others, right? Like fully. And I think like that is the connection that we were created for. You know, you want to go back to the Garden of Eden, shall we? You know, God created Adam for a relationship with him and created Eve for a relationship with Adam and him. And it was all based on relationship. So I think we just need to really renew our mind and get out of the kind of the idea that the world has of just do it on your own. You'll be fine. It's easier, you know?
Yeah.
It might be easier in some ways, but it's also easier. Well, it's not easier because you're not living in the way that God designed you to, you know? And I think there's so much freedom, even though it's difficult, but there's so much freedom of living in community with the community, people to push you, you know?
Yeah.
And you, Lucas, what are your closing statements here?
I don't know if there's much to say after what
I kind of said it all. Yeah, sometimes I do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like maybe you probably kind of said it already, but I guess I would say in my own words maybe.
Just say it differently.
Yeah. Yeah, just to I guess to not forget when we start thinking so much, and I catch myself a lot, and I feel like I'm still doing it. Is like to want to work for me and like owning my own thing, and like just not forget on that we're here for people, and God called us for the people, you know. As a church, that's why we do it. You know, that's why we're here. That's why we build the church, is because we want people to get to know God and to have the same blessing as we did, to get to know Him and like see all that, you know, and like why not want to share it. And I feel like I'm quoting the evangelism episode 1 podcast, you know.
Yes,
but
throwback.
But not just with the people outside, because I feel like evangelizing people that haven't heard of God is easier, no. But the ones that are running with you, you know, and because we then are corrected, you know, if we're wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, like to be pushing each other, you know, and all that, and to like, I guess my highlight is that to like to keep keeping myself accountable when I think of just myself, but like, okay, but what am I doing for the rest of the people? Yeah. I'm not alone on this.
Yeah.
Where are we going? And just bless one another. You know?
That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Just bless each other.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just be holy.
Just be holy. Thank you. It's Jesus that makes us holy and not ourselves. Amen.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I guess with this, we can say thank you so much, guys, for joining to the Anchor of the Week podcast in this episode.
Yes, and make sure you follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and all other podcast platforms so you never miss an episode.
See you next time.